At a London train station, train guard Joe is wrapping up his shift. When he gets to his locker, he finds a letter informing him that he didn't get the promotion he applied for. Frustrated, he crumples the paper. His supervisor approaches and asks him to cover the night shift since the night guard called in sick. Joe initially wants to decline, but changes his mind when he realizes Ellen, the trolley girl he has a crush on, will be working the same shift. Once the train departs, Joe starts checking passengers' tickets. Most cooperate, but some are rude and annoyed. When a woman drops her cane, Joe helps her, only to be startled by a sudden growl, which turns out to be her dog. Another passenger, Kate, says she lost her ticket and gets upset when Joe charges her a fine. Meanwhile, Billy changes into more comfortable clothes in a corner. Joe notices the bathroom door marked with an out-of-order sign and sees water leaking from it. When Joe bumps into Ellen, he nervously tries to ask her out, but she turns him down. The awkwardness is heightened by another passenger, Paul, watching the exchange. The train continues its journey peacefully through the rain and a full moon, stopping at stations where passengers get off until only a few remain. As the train passes through a wooded area, a loud screech echoes, and the train abruptly stops. Joe begins moving through the cars to investigate and notices a shadow behind a door. Just as he's about to open it, the train's speakers startle him. The driver, Tony, announces they hit something and asks passengers to stay calm while they figure it out. Joe opens the door and finds Ellen's trolley tipped over. He tries to lift it but struggles until Adrian steps in to help. Joe notices 2 sets of keys on the ground, both of which belong to Adrian, leaving him confused. As panic spreads among the passengers, Joe works to calm them down and tries contacting Tony on the radio, but there's no response. Instead, he uses the train's speakers to reassure everyone. Meanwhile, Tony has left the train to check what happened. He discovers they hit a deer, which is stuck in the wheels. He tries to pull it out, but lacks the strength. Suddenly, Tony hears a noise behind him. When he turns, a mysterious creature attacks and starts eating him. His blood splatters onto a nearby window, but the rain quickly washes it away before anyone inside notices. Back on the train, Joe grows impatient and uses his keys to enter the control car, only to find it empty. He looks outside but doesn't see Tony. After telling Ellen to distract the passengers with free snacks, Joe steps outside for a longer look but still finds no sign of Tony. Joe calls the company's rescue team, but they tell him they're delayed due to multiple accidents caused by the storm. The phone signal is weak and full of static, but Joe manages to hear the rescue team say they'll arrive in 4 hours. He updates the passengers, but this only makes them panic. When he mentions that the driver has vanished, their complaints get louder. Adrian steps in and yells at them to calm down, reminding everyone that there's no phone signal. He suggests they walk to the next station to call for help. Joe tries to warn them that it's dangerous and could cost him his job, but the passengers gang up on him. Reluctantly, he agrees to lead them. Joe unlocks the door, and the group forms a line, walking alongside the train. They have no idea that something is watching them from the woods. After a while, they hear movement in the bushes. Joe and Ellen step forward to investigate and are horrified to find Tony's mauled body on the ground. They quickly run back to warn the passengers, telling everyone to return to the train as growling and howling echo in the distance. Joe fumbles to unlock the door as the passengers scramble to get inside. An elderly couple, slower than the rest, struggles to climb aboard. Just as Jenny is about to make it in, the monster grabs her leg and violently shakes her between the doors. The group finally manages to pull her in and lock the car. Inside, they sit Jenny down while Ellen washes her wound and wraps it with whatever they can find. Billy and Matthew shine a flashlight out the window, but they can't spot anything in the darkness. Joe double-checks the door to ensure it's locked, but the monster suddenly pounds on the car, growling ferociously. Everyone goes silent, terrified. They hear the creature's claws scratching at the car, but after a while, the howling grows distant. Only then do they feel safe enough to talk again. Joe heads to the control car to try using the train phone, but there's no signal. Billy shows up and explains that he's an engineering student. After inspecting the controls, he discovers that the train has a fuel leak, which caused the line to split during the crash. Without fixing it, the train won't move. Outside, the train's broken antenna is revealed, suggesting the creature damaged it. Joe relays the situation to the passengers, sparking a debate about what kind of animal is attacking them. Adrian insists it's a bear, but Nina argues that bears don't howl like that. Jenny, still shaken, says it wasn't an animal. It was something more human. The others dismiss her comments as shock-induced rambling. Suddenly, noises come from another car, alarming the group. Worried that the monster may have gotten inside, Joe grabs a fire extinguisher and teams up with Billy and Adrian to investigate. They carefully move through the train, following the sounds to the bathroom. Adrian raises his weapon, ready to strike, as Joe unlocks the door. To their surprise, Paul tumbles out instead. It turns out Paul had been stuck in the bathroom since before the crash. Joe and the others bring him back to the group, and Paul gets caught up on the situation. Instead of panicking about the monster, he's upset about missing his stop. Later, they check on Jenny's wound and notice it's getting worse. She's developed a fever too. Kate sees that Nina is young and scared, so she sits with her to offer comfort by sharing stories about her own daughter. Suddenly, the creature starts pounding on the train door again before jumping onto the roof, making the lights flicker. At that moment, Nina's phone gets a signal, and she receives a call from her mom. She tries to explain what's happening and ask for help, but before she can, the creature smashes through the window. It grabs Nina by the legs and drags her out as she screams. Kate tries to hold onto her hand, but Matthew pulls Kate back to stop her from getting caught too. Moments later, they hear the beast mauling Nina on the roof, and her blood stains the windows. Terrified, the group rushes to another car to hide. Kate breaks down, furious that no one tried harder to save Nina. An argument breaks out, but Ged, Jenny's husband, shouts at everyone to calm down and reminds them they need to work together if they want to survive. Joe tells the group about the tools box on the train, so they start barricading every entrance with parts of the train, like the seats. As time passes, everyone's mood grows darker. Jenny and Kate talk and realize they didn't even know Nina's name. Jenny admits she always wanted kids, but could never have them. In another corner, Adrian talks to Joe and confesses he has 2 sets of keys because he has a home for his family and a secret apartment for his affairs. He tells Joe that sometimes you have to do things you're not proud of to survive and suggests teaming up to leave the weaker passengers behind. Before Joe can respond, Jenny suddenly vomits blood and even 2 teeth. Another argument starts about what they should do next, but it's interrupted when Joe notices Paul is missing. The barricade has been moved and Adrian wants to seal it back up immediately. However, Joe and Billy convince him to give them a minute to find Paul. Joe goes into the other car and finds Paul stuck in the bathroom again. As Joe works to open the door, the light inside breaks and the creature comes in through the roof to attack Paul. Joe is forced to back away as the door gets mangled during the attack. Blood soon seeps through the holes in the door, and when Joe peeks through one, he's horrified to see Paul's lifeless body. Joe tries to return to the others, only to find that Adrian has blocked the door. Meanwhile, Adrian hears the commotion and decides to leave the train to save himself. He removes the barricade on the boarding door, but realizes it's locked. Joe has the key. Back in the other car, Joe desperately pushes against the door while watching the creature slowly approach him. When Joe is about to be attacked, the others finally open the door and pull him into the car, quickly blocking it again. The group piles up anything they can find to reinforce the barricade, while Adrian tries to smash the window with a fire extinguisher, but it doesn't break. Unfortunately, the creature is too strong and smashes through the barricade. Ellen freezes in fear, but Joe acts quickly and pulls her out of the way just in time. The beast turns its attention to Joe and roars in his face, giving Ellen the chance to stab it. The creature retaliates, hitting her so hard that she flies across the car. Seizing the moment, the others jump on the monster from behind, attacking it with whatever they can grab. Billy gets caught by the neck and slammed against the ceiling, but is released when Adrian smashes the fire extinguisher into the creature's stab wound. At that moment, Matthew charges in with a fire axe and hacks at the monster repeatedly until it finally collapses. Kate has to pull Matthew back as he starts to lose control. The group takes a closer look at the dead creature and notices a ring on its finger. Just like Jenny mentioned, the monster looks oddly human. Matthew concludes that it's a werewolf. Adrian reminds everyone that being bitten can turn someone into one of them, making the group suspicious of Jenny. While some passengers cover the body, Ged shares a story about a train derailment in this area years ago. Many bodies were never recovered, and others were found mauled, but no explanation was ever given. Ged believes the werewolf was behind those deaths too. Suddenly, the beast wakes up and howls, prompting Joe to grab the fire extinguisher and smash its face repeatedly until it stops moving. In the forest, other werewolves hear the dying howl of their leader. At the same time, Jenny's face begins to change, and she starts growling. Adrian insists they need to kill her before she fully transforms, but Ged refuses to let that happen. The other passengers try to hold Adrian back, but he fights against them and ends up choking Jenny. Joe punches him to knock him out, and the group decides to tie both Adrian and Jenny up using belts. Afterward, they come up with a plan. Billy volunteers to fix the train and teaches Ellen which buttons to press so they can leave as soon as it's repaired. Joe gives a speech over the intercom to keep everyone's spirits up. Matthew and Billy head outside, quickly finding the fuel leak. Billy crawls under the train to fix it while Matthew stands guard. Inside the train, Kate confesses to Joe that she and Adrian had a one-night stand some time ago. but Adrian dismisses it like he doesn't remember. Meanwhile, Jenny starts struggling to breathe, and Adrian, still tied up, warns that they need to act before it's too late. Outside, Matthew hears a strange noise in the forest and decides to investigate, leaving Billy alone in the dark. Following the sound, he hears what sounds like Nina crying for help. He tracks the voice to a tree, only to see Nina's lifeless body being devoured by a werewolf perched in the branches. Terrified, Matthew tries to run, but the werewolves quickly surround him. He swings his axe in a desperate attempt to fight back, but it's no use. The werewolves overpower him and tear him apart as they eat him alive. Inside the train, everyone hears Matthew's screams echoing through the night, followed by a chilling howl. Jenny freezes in fear while Adrian keeps urging Kate to kill her before she transforms fully. Billy manages to fix the train, and the lights flicker back on. Joe and Ellen scramble to figure out the controls. Meanwhile, the werewolves get closer to the train, forcing Billy to grab onto the undercarriage and lift himself to hide. The creatures reach the front of the train, startling Joe and Ellen just as they finally manage to get it moving. Billy clings tightly to the train to avoid being left behind. Suddenly, Jenny completes her transformation into a werewolf. Kate rushes to untie Adrian before Jenny can break free using her new strength. Adrian jumps in to help Ged, but Jenny quickly knocks him aside. At that moment, another werewolf breaks into the train and grabs Kate, who screams for help. Instead of helping, Adrian kicks her, sending both her and the werewolf off the train. As the train speeds away, Kate is left behind, her screams quickly silenced as the werewolves attack her. While Ged desperately tries to calm Jenny down, Adrian grabs a wrench and attempts to fight her off. Furious, Ged punches Adrian before he can strike again. But Jenny leaps onto her husband and bites into his neck, spraying blood everywhere. As Jenny turns her attention to Adrian, Billy struggles to hold on to the moving train. He accidentally breaks the repairs he had made, causing the train to stop once more. Joe and Ellen rush out of the control car and manage to stab Jenny just before she can kill Adrian. Furious, Joe turns his rage on Adrian, tackling him and landing several punches. Ellen pulls Joe back, trying to stop him. At that moment, the werewolves take advantage of the chaos to enter the train, forcing Joe and Ellen to focus on locking the doors. Seeing an opportunity to improve his chances of survival, Adrian decides to leave someone behind as bait. Without hesitation, he knocks Joe to the ground. The hit doesn't knock Joe out completely, and he immediately fights back, leading to a scuffle on the ground. As the two struggle, Ellen grabs a sharp piece of metal and cuts Adrian until he finally lets go of Joe. While Ellen helps Joe up, Adrian blocks the exit, snatches the keys from the door, and jumps off the train. The werewolves surround Joe and Ellen, but before they can attack, Billy shows up holding a Molotov cocktail. He throws it at one of the creatures, setting it on fire and starting a blaze. Then he grabs a torch, using the flames to scare the other werewolves into retreating to the other car. Billy hands Joe and Ellen a crowbar, giving them just enough time to force the door open and jump off the train. Unfortunately, Billy is overrun by the werewolves and killed. Joe and Ellen sprint through the forest, but the sound of the howling monsters grows closer. Realizing they won't make it together, Joe stops and kisses Ellen, telling her to run and leave him behind as a distraction. With tears streaming down her face, Ellen reluctantly flees down a path while Joe prepares to fight. Armed with the sharp metal piece, he stabs one werewolf and continues to fight as hard as he can. However, the werewolves are too strong, and they eventually overpower him, biting him in the process. Moments later, Ellen arrives at the next train station, clutching Joe's name tag in her hand as she sobs. Meanwhile, Adrian continues running through the forest and stumbles upon some clothes on the ground. Suddenly, the werewolves surround him, and a newly transformed Joe leaps forward to attack. Don't forget to subscribe. Here's some more interesting story you don't want to miss.